shalom, my friends. Shalom, my enemies. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And with me in the neighborhood is this well-bespoke, fine young gentleman whose name is James B. Flaherty, or Jim Flaherty, as his friends call him. So he is, yes indeed, he is 89 years young. He is a novelist, a writer, a public speaker. He also has many years in some of the acting game as well as the PR and advertising game. So now he's publishing books. Books like Embrace Your Age. If you had my prostate, you wouldn't be.
I haven't yet.
It's okay to get older.
Can you be louder, Dave?
I can. Well, I'm Rabbi Sol. I'm not Dave.
Oh, Rabbi, I'm sorry.
I shout all the time. I will be happy to shout for you.
Good. Yeah, I don't know why I'm not getting a big full volume of you.
Everybody wants the full volume of the Sol. This is
their
one.
I mean, my rabbi friend has such a loud mouth, I have to shut him up.
Well, I will do my best to scream at you in a very loud kind of a way.
Good.
My output is as best as I can make it. I'm sorry about it. So I will lean in a bit also to the microphone, and that might help.
Great. So
we're talking now with Jim Flaherty. So yes, tell us, Jim, shalom to you. Welcome to the neighborhood. So you have this book. When did you write Embrace Your Age?
Embrace Your Age came out about a year and a half ago. And I think it's a very good book. I'm actually more interested right now in a book I've just finished. I'm doing the final changes to the manuscript right now, called Loving Longevity. And the subtitle is Make Your Next Years Your Best Years.
All right, make your next years your best years. Fine.
Yeah, and I'm saying under my name on the cover, it says James B. Flaherty. I'm 89 and have a 10-year plan.
How am I? God. So no, but let me bring this to you immediately. You, God willing, seem to be in good health. Knock wood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, but how do you respond to people when they're 80s? Because 85 seems to be that dividing line. People feel fine until they're 85. 86, they're just rolling down the hill.
Right. Obviously, Rabbi, there's nothing we can do about what our DNA dictates. You know, they say, oh, well, your family is heart disease all the way down, or diabetes or cancer, and chances are you're going to have it. So I say, fine, if you know that ahead of time, find the right clinic, the right hospital, the right doctor, and be prepared to fight it, because obviously medicine and treatments are changing. Otherwise, we wouldn't have an increasingly older population. We're getting older and older and older. All of the Flaherty men, all of them died before 65. So here I am at 89 and bouncing, and okay, fine. I had bladder cancer. I've had rotator cuff surgery. I had an accident and broke my tibia in 4 places, so I have a new hip. But those are things, and they go away.
Usually hip is the indicator. Once the hip goes,
yeah,
the cliche, everything else comes tumbling down after.
Yeah, and that was 8 years ago. So I am embracing my age. I am very careful. There's no falling allowed. I get to a stairwell, and I count the stairs that I'm holding on. And I'm watching it.
Just for
no, I don't. I have them. If I'm going outside, or if I have to go to the city. I rarely go to New York anymore. I live up in the boonies. I live 2.5 hours north of New York, in that very pretty part of America where New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts all bump into each other. The foothills of the Berkshires. It's very pretty.
Yeah.
So I really am in the country most of the time, but even in the country, there can be icy roads. There can be all kinds of things. So I'm careful, but I also do all the healthy stuff. I eat healthfully. I exercise every day. I'm very spoiled, Rabbi. I consider it a very practical move on my part. Most people go, "You do what? You have what?" I have an internal swimming pool. But let's face it,
What do you mean an internal swimming pool?
I have a pool in my house.
Your pool. Okay, yeah. Well,
Yeah, so I mean,
you made money
in New York State, if you have an outside pool, they're very pretty. And what? You use them twice a week for 2 or 3 months, and that's it. And you spend all that money to look at that very pretty thing out there. I use my pool every morning.
Sure.
30 minutes of not swimming laps. I go in and do exercises in the deep end with weights and do all this stuff every single morning. Six days a week, except Sunday, because I get up early and go to church for choir rehearsal.
All right, yeah. Hey, I mean, this is thrilling. You have kids, right? You have grown, I assume.
My babies are now 62 and 64. I have 4 millennial grandsons, 30 to 38. I have 2 half Japanese great grandsons.
I mean, this is absolutely. Are you now? You were married at a certain point. Is she?
Yeah, I've been widowed twice.
Wow.
Okay, but I've had a very interesting. I've had a lot of fun in my life. Actually, I mean, I did not grow up with money. My father died when I was 14, going on 11. We were very innocent in the 40s and 50s. The kids have no idea the difference in my life. When I read things about teen pregnancies and girls leaving school and high school and all the drug problems, I can assure you in Coral Gables, Florida, there were no teen pregnancies. Or if there were, maybe there were, but we sure as hell didn't know about it. And I can tell you, though, Rabbi, we were very innocent. Ours, the 40s and 50s, was the yes or no ma'am generation. We didn't have social media to screw up our heads. We bought the first TV on our block. I was 15 years old. I never saw television until I was 15. I lived in Coral Gables, a suburb of Miami, without air conditioning, before air conditioning. People said, "How could you possibly do that?" I said, we were perfectly happy. Nobody had air conditioning.
Yeah. Now you could leave the doors open at night because nobody was stealing.
Yeah, you had fans, you had screens on the window.
I get that. I do. What was your first? Do you have any memories of being alive in the 90s? It seems so long ago now. The 1940s, like anything of the politics of the time, of the era of the.
Not really. It's amazing how I'm always very intrigued when I talk to people who remember every moment of their little years. They remember the front porch with grandma and grandpa are swinging on the tire in the tree. And I remember I have little moments of remembering.
What about like BE Day or BJ Day or being with a.
Yeah, I remember. I remember my mother talking to my father about he was going to, because today is Pearl Harbor Day, he was going to go and join the military. And I remember them discussing it. I was 7 years old or something like that. So politics, I remember them. They campaigned for Tom Dewey.
Wow. He almost defeated Truman. For a couple of hours he did.
Yeah.
What else even the 60s are now so long ago, or the 50s. Do you remember things from the 50s?
Well, in the 50s, I graduated from high school in 1953, and then I went to University of Florida in Gainesville for 2 years, which was then still a semi-Southern university. And I went to my counselor and said, feeling sophomoric thoughts, I said, "What am I going to be when I grow up?" And he said, "Well, James, you're heading for a journalism degree, and you get a job in a small town Florida newspaper. And besides the $30 a week salary, you wouldn't like it because you're not one of us. And I said, what am I, green? And he said, no, but you're from Coral Gables, which is really a Yankee town, and your parents are Midwesterners. He said, do you feel at all Southern, Jim? I said, no, I don't at all. And he said, if you want to be a journalist, go to Columbia or University of Missouri. But he said, there's a whole new area. I laughed at this now, a whole new area of study, like the combination of advertising and public relations and TV and speech, everything. It's called communications, and now every roadside garage and chapel offers a degree in communication. In those days, 2 universities in America offered communication.
Because nobody knew what the hell it was.
I transferred to Michigan State University, was in the band, and saw snow for the first time at age 20. And I did that, graduated, came to New York City, got a job. I took home $200 a month after taxes and had no allowance from home. I was poor, but I loved it. I thought, this is the best thing in the world. I found a quote from Noel Coward, of all people, which I loved then and I still love it now. Work is more fun than fun. And I think it's terrific. Yeah, terrific. Because I did very well. I became a madman. You know what that was? If you saw the TV series, that was me. I was the corner office writer, creative director of advertising agencies.
Well, what campaigns? Are there campaigns we might remember?
No, not real. I changed. I modernized the Avon lady. I made sure that Smirnoff was still the #1 vodka in the world. I sold British Airways Concorde jets. I used to fly to England every other week for a 3-hour flight. Then I accepted a job when my children were 9 and 11. I said, pack. They said, where are we going, Daddy? I said, we're moving 5,400 miles to Buenos Aires, Argentina. And they said, okay, and we did that.
Your wife had something to say about it?
Yeah, of course we had discussed it, but I was creative director of J. Walter Thompson in Argentina there, and we had a wonderful life. We had a cabin cruiser, we had a chauffeur, life was very nice, and Argentina was Spanish-speaking Europe. It was very sophisticated and very, very beautiful and all that stuff. Now it's completely screwed up thanks to the government.
Wait, the government you were there under were the Perones, weren't they?
No. Perón came back my last year. Perón came back, and the Argentines reelected him. I couldn't believe it. It would be like the Germans reelecting Hitler.
It would.
The Argentines reelected Perón, and he appointed his, quote, secretary, because Evita was long dead. He appointed his secretary, who had been a nudie pole dancer in Panama, as vice-presidente, as vice president. He died a year later. I thought, I won't say the word, died appropriately of cancer of something behind you, and which I thought was very appropriate. And she, the pole dancer, became La Presidente de Argentina. I couldn't believe it. I thought, all we need are clowns and elephants. It was Barnum and Bailey time. It was ridiculous. And at that point, I left, came back to New York, jumped off that mountain, and started a business I knew nothing about. I bought an abandoned stack of stone in the country that I loved, an English country house, and I turned it into a country inn conference center, and I owned it for 30 years, and it became nationally famous. The first 10 years, I worked 70 hours a week to make it happen.
But you loved it.
I loved it. But I knew nothing. I left a solid gold career doing something I knew and understood, being a creative director, and did something just being an innkeeper, and I was married 216 times. And I marketed it to high level executive. So friends would call from New York and say, Flaherty, what are you doing up there in Anemia? The town is Armenia, New York. They go, anemia or amnesia. I said, what are you doing talking to the corner deli owner? I have Henry Kissinger this week. And next week I have the gods of the American Express. And after that, the owners of the New York Times. I had America America's elite under my roof. And it was fine. I liked it.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, I had fun too. I had fun doing it.
Still there, even though you're not running it.
Yeah, it's now a boutique hotel. I laughed. I just got their monthly email. Rooms are now $600 a night with nothing included. And I used to sell weekends for about $600 with all meals and spirits included. It was a country inn. It was a very different operation.
What, the 1980s, 90s?
Yeah, well, I opened in 1979. 79, and so we got all through the 80s. And at that point, it became successful. And after the first 10 years, I started living very well. I had a villa in Acapulco for 25 years, and I traveled around the world and did lovely things. My children were educated and out of college by then. And so I have a very loving relationship with both daughters are coming for Christmas. And one grandson from each daughter.
Holy shit! No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Like how do I get in your will? This is
Listen, I told the Rev, I call him, my minister, who's a Yale scholar and a darling little guy, an Illinois farm boy with a real steel trap brain, and I said, if you start drooling and are unable to give these wonderful sermons of yours, I'll be Jewish. I said, I've been Catholic.
Yes.
My rabbi friend calls me, I love it, a collapsed Catholic. Because
you are obviously a believer. I mean, you go to church. You do.
Oh yeah. Oh no. I the rabbi and his wife were at my table Thanksgiving, and he's a great friend, and and I got him to come to the Presbyterian church and give the sermon one Sunday. And at the end of the sermon, he picked up his guitar and sang a song. I mean, he's just a showman. And then 3 months later, our reverend and the congregation went to temple, and our reverend gave the sermon. So I've created a bridge between the temple and the Presbyterian church in this small town.
Yes,
which is nice.
As long as you don't baptize the rabbi, that would be a very bad.
He told a story at Thanksgiving I loved. He said, I was doing a funeral and they had astroturf all around the grave, which is very slippery. And I saw one man was standing too close and he slipped and he fell into the grave. And his wife said, "Lou, get out of the goddamn grave." He said, so I said the only thing I could, amen. I love the guy.
One thing that is on your bio on your website, which by the way, folks, is jamesbflaherty.com, jamesbflaherty.com, is that, listen, I do want to roll back momentarily to your college years.
Yeah.
When you graduated, when you got your degree and you had your ceremony.
Yeah, at MSU.
Yeah, MSU, that your commencement speaker
was Richard Nixon. He was the vice president. He was the vice president of the U.S. He said, my boss said, don't try to don't get smart, Alecky Dick, because a lot of those kids are a lot smarter than you. And because the president of MSU was on Eisenhower's Atomic Commission. So MSU was very tied to the government in those days, but.
So what else do you remember about Nixon's? Did he mention checkers? Did he mention?
No, I used to see Nixon. I would go down to Miami back to Coral Gables, and my mother belonged to the Key Biscayne Beach Club, and we would go out there, and that's where Nixon would go to visit his friend Bibi Rebozo, and we see the president and Bibi walking barefoot on the beach, walking around the island. We'd say, "Good morning, Mr. President." And, he was there all the time.
Wow. Just the idea of him walking barefoot may be the most.
Yeah, sure. He was on the beach.
I know, it's Nixon. Nixon was born in a suit and born in a shadow. The very fact of him having toenails and sand is so disturbing. Now, at what point, as a madman, as an ad exec, you did a ton of writing, I'm sure.
I'm a writer.
Yeah.
Right.
When did you really start to write write in longer form?
Writing books. Well, I couldn't do it during the innkeeping years because that's constant, that's nonstop 24/7 work. Um, I didn't start writing novels. I wrote the bottom two books here are fiction. They're pure novels, romance, sex, Broadway, international travel novels. They're fun. And I was in my 70s, early 70s when I started writing those. And then as I hit 80, I realized a lot of people in my age were retreating from life. People who I knew, whom I had known in their 40s, 50s, and 60s were a stick of dynamite, suddenly were, oh, I know I can't do anything and nobody really wants to see me. And I said, that's just BS. Get up. What, you were one of the funniest broads that ever lived, and now you think you're an old lady. And it annoyed me so much that I wrote these two books. The Dear Old Friends was really a love letter to all my old friends. My whole life, I had friends 20 to 50 years older for some reason, from the time I was a teenager. But Embrace Your Age is really talking, every chapter asks the question, if you don't have any best friends, why should I talk to you? But how are you going to handle it when they die? It asks real questions, and I want people to be able to answer it. And then the new book, the Loving Longevity, gets into all of that, plus my philosophy of living. I have a very strong feeling that, and then I always have to be careful to not sound preacher-ish, that I want people really to concentrate on the fact of the miracle of life, that every day there's no guarantees we're going to wake up on the right side of the grass. And if you do, I think you should wake up and say, hot damn, another chance to see, hear, taste, touch, speak, share, love, embrace. And it kills me when people don't. So I find, and so I'm trying to also push people to live. I try not to say the second commandment, but basically it is that. I'm trying to teach people to do something good for at least one person a day. Do something good for somebody where you expect nothing back in return.
Oh, no.
Whether it's the nice lady bagging your groceries in the grocery store, which is a thankless job, say, aren't you nice putting all the frozen goods in one bag? And you're so fast and efficient, and she will smile at you. And what's more, she'll smile at the next person and say, hello. So your goodness passes on. I want people to do that. My mother was a very smart woman, because she was left with me alone, a very young 14-year-old when my father died. All of a sudden, he died in 1 week. Went in the hospital one Sunday and died the next Sunday. And she taught me when I was probably in college. She said, I want you to understand something. Every day of your life, you're going to have to confront your biggest critic. You're the toughest person you know in your life. It's that person in your bathroom mirror. And every morning you can look at that person and go, good God, another day, or smile bravely and cheerfully and say, good God, another day. And it may sound corny, but I basically do that. And I never wake up depressed. I do not have depressive days. I wake up thinking of, gee, I've got an opera. Here's my schedule. You can see all the handwritten. I've added things in the last 2 or 3 days. Every line is a day, and they're full days, and I live up to my schedule. And I wake up. I make a list at night of all the things. This was last night's list. And then I check them off the next morning as I get them done, to make sure that I've gotten those things out of the way, so I don't have to think about them at night, because I've made the list at nighttime.
Yeah. No, my list is like, wake up, try and have a bowel movement, don't die,
Yeah.
cry about something, yell at somebody, have a little food, go back to sleep, and try to wake up again. This is my list. So far, I'm able to check most of the boxes.
Good.
But let's talk a little bit more about your books, because you mentioned that one deals with Broadway a little bit,
These bottom two books they both have a little bit of Broadway action in them, and
were you ever? I mean, what do did you see Broadway shows in the 40s?
When I was in New York, the joke was you didn't have to read New York Magazine or the New Yorker to know what was the best show, the best restaurant, the best book. You could ask Jim because Jim knew everything. Right? Because I was a creative director and I was in charge of the world. Okay, and the New York Times would have a list of all the shows, and I could go down and check off knowing that I had seen all of them. Now I've seen two Broadway shows in the last 3 years.
Well, you still go. I mean, again, you don't go to the city that much. So
I know. I sold my apartment 2 years ago. It's the first time since age 21 or 22 that I've not had an apartment, had a New York address. It's the first time in my life that I've owned only one structure, the one I live in, which I love. It's a 1940 dairy barn that I'd converted. And it's great. The living room was 35 feet high. It was the hayloft. So it's fun.
It's like a dairy barn, an actual dairy barn, not like the dairy barn. There was.
No, this was a barn. This had cows in it.
Wow.
Yeah, I love barns. This is my third barn, actually. I had a thing for barns when I discovered them in the country. I didn't grow up with them in Florida.
No.
It wasn't part of my life. But when I found them up north, I thought, what a wonderful shape that is.
I got to go back and ask you, like, what are some of the earliest Broadway shows that you remember seeing?
First show I saw out of college, I came to New York. I saw with the original cast, Damn Yankees, which was a wonderful show with Gwen Verdon, and it was, and I was knocked out. Then I got married like almost the next year. I was in the Army. After a year, I had to go in the Army. I was earning $80 a month, and I met this absolutely beautiful girl who I couldn't believe wanted to marry me, was in love with me. And I thought nobody would fall in love with me anyway. Did not have a big super image of myself as a sex appeal. And we got married while I was in the Army, and we had a 4-day weekend off. We came to New York, stayed in the Hotel New Yorker, and we saw in the original cast the new show that had just opened on Broadway, My Fair Lady. Then, I forgot. The year I came to New York also, when my first job, I was working for Allied Stores for $65 a week before taxes. And one girl that was also in that same program with me, so we had to save every quarter. We bought tickets to the new hot show that everybody was talking about on Broadway called West Side Story. And the big joke in New York back then, and I think the New Yorker did a cartoon about it, was the two Jewish ladies standing together, and one said, "So have you seen this new show? They're all talking about this West Side Story thing." And the other woman said, "Where are you going to find hoodlums what can dance like that?" Which I loved.
Wow. I mean, so, and you, by the way, have done a little bit of acting yourself.
A little bit. Thank you, Jesus, that I didn't have that need or the screaming desire to be an actor. We have an Equity Playhouse 8 minutes from my house, right down the road. Up here in the country, they have them. This is called Sharon Playhouse. It's been in operation for more than 100 years.
Wait, and is that in Connecticut? In stores in Connecticut?
In Sharon, Connecticut.
Yeah.
I'm on the border with Sharon, Connecticut.
Oh, okay.
My house I'm 1 mile from the Connecticut border. And last year I was in our town. We did that. And last night I was in a reading of a new play of 4 teenagers are sent to an old folks home to deal with 4 old people. And it was a reading with emotion. So
this is modern times. So you were cast as one of the teenagers.
Yes, of course, absolutely.
Age doesn't matter.
When I was 36 and living in Argentina, and I've shrunk to 6 feet now. I was 6'3.5" back then with black hair, kind of a modified Jesus hair and a black mustache. And I directed a musical for the International Theater Group. And the next year they came, I was so busy. The job was a killer. I was working in Spanish, and I had Ford, Pan Am, Kodak, and Lever Brothers, plus other accounts, and 42 creative people working for me. And they said, we'd like you to do another show. And I said, I can't, I'm too busy to direct a show. They said, no, we want you to be in one, Jim. And you don't even have to try out. It's promises, promises. And I said, oh, it's a sweet show. I know it. Neil Simon wrote the book. Burt Bacharach did the music, everything. They said, fine, just show up for rehearsal. So I showed up, and those bastards put me in the leading role.
Oh, they didn't tell you.
Which I was not. I'm not prepared for. I mean, my voice was stronger then, but the leading male role sings half the songs. I mean, it's all the time you're singing, so, but it was a sweet show. So now I just sing in the choir. That's it.
Fair enough. And you were you weren't the narrator in our town. Who did they get you to play?
No, I wasn't the narrator. We switched it. We had a very well-known woman actress who lives up in the area. Yeah, play it, which was terrific. I mean, which worked out fine. It could be a woman playing the narrator.
No, absolutely. No,
yeah. It's on Broadway right now in a revival, doing extremely well. It's interesting because nothing happens in our town.
Just life and death.
It's life and death, right?
Life, marriage, and death. But,
yeah. But it was an interesting.
It was a magnificent
journey.
So who's this well-known actress? Who's
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me because I know her. I married her 35 years ago. I mean, I married her off at Troutbeck at my inn.
Oh yeah.
I'll try to think of it. Well, I know she married Brad Whitford, who was in The West Wing.
Oh, all right.
Oh God.
Hold on. Sharon Connecticut.
She's a terrific dame too. She's a very good actress. She was in Malcolm in the Middle. I know that she was in the TV series.
I'm trying to think of.
Never mind.
It doesn't matter.
I can't dig it up right now.
But whatever. Well, we can figure it out. But anywho, also, what else? Tell me about your book. I think it's behind you. Claire, wife, mother, mistress. Murderer,
yeah. And by the way, the cover is a painting of my younger daughter, done by some friend of hers when she was in college. And so when the book was finished, I sent it. And Shannon lives in England. She's lived in England for 35 years. I sent it to her, and she said, "Well, I've never murdered anyone."
Well, that's more than you wanted to. Well,
she's coming a week from Tuesday. Shannon's coming with one of her sons and his wife. I'm bringing them over from England for the holidays.
Now, and by the way, if there are literary agents watching, you make this very clear on your website that you've got these books, you're writing constantly. You have a new book that you've just finished. So if there are an agent out there.
That's what I want. I also, besides the books, I have, which these two books would be terrific feature films or TV series. They're both written that way. I'm very commercial. I mean, I write things thinking of how they can be commercialized. I've also I have an original TV series and a screenplay ready to go.
Ready to go. Well, can't you be your own producer then? I mean, you have thank God, the time and the money. Why not just?
I don't have those connections anymore, and I don't see me going out kicking dirt to get the money to do that. Not at this age. Maybe had I been 69, 68, I would still do it. at 89, I'm not sure. I want an agent to come to me and say, well, he's an old fart, but I'll read his stuff. And if they can see what I know is there, that it's commercial and that it will sell and that it will appeal to people because I write things that people can read and say, oh, that's me, or I relate to that. You know, I
So
would
yeah,
I would love
you're at
I
the
would love
age
to
where
do
you're just
that.
going to sit and do you have a new idea for a book? Something that you're going to be working on next?
Well, besides the Loving Longevity, which I've just finished,
Finished, yeah.
yeah, I mean that should be published in January or February this year. I'm working on a new novel too. I have about 125 pages written of a novel, just which
So
I'm.
can you tell about it, or you keep stum?
No, this one has a male protagonist. My first two novels had female protagonists. I started out funny. I wrote Role of a Lifetime first, that book there, and I first started out with a male protagonist, and he bored me, so I switched, and it became woman oriented, and both books are about women because
Right,
I
but this
found
new
it
one,
easier. I like women better. I find them they're more intelligent than men generally.
generally, yes.
Yeah,
Generally, yes. This is we have to admit.
and but there's another thing that I know about, and you would love it too, Rabbi. You really would. It's called Modern Elder Academy. I would like you to write modernelderacademy.com and say, please put me, Jim said, put me on the mailing list. It's free for the daily blog, which is called The Wisdom Well. And they have free monthly webinars
Oh,
for an hour with interviewing brilliant people. And then the only thing they charge for is if you want to come to one of the workshops. I've gone to 4 workshops. The last one was in October. They have 2 campuses. One is in the Baja of on the Mexican side, about an hour outside of Cabo San Lucas, and the other one is just outside of Santa Fe. And I've gone to 3 in the Baja, and I just went to one in Santa Fe. And on the dais were Liz Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love,
oh yeah.
and a wonderful Black woman named Tererai Trent, who was
Terror Eye Tret.
Tererai, Tererai Trent. That Trent was the American fellow she married. She was a woman in her 70s. When she was 12, her parents sold her for a cow to a man to be a wife. By the time she was 15, she had 3 children. Then she had 3 more. A woman met her, and after the 8 years it took her to get her GED out of Africa, the woman sent her to America, where she earned a bachelor, a master's, and a PhD. She's a worldwide speaker. She's built 44 schools in Africa.
Oh
She
my
was
God.
darling. I was crazy about her. She was
That is,
a wonderful woman.
if I could get a woman for a cow, like that's worth it.
That's
Definitely big on it because sometimes it's not an even trade.
wishful thinking, Rabbi.
Sometimes the cow is more valuable. Sometimes you get more meat, you get
That's
more
right.
for a few years, and the woman you're just annoying. But when you get a woman like that for a cow,
Like that,
that's
right.
pretty damn good. That's
Yeah.
we have been chatting with James B. Flaherty. I want to remind you that you can they get your books through your website, James?
Through Amazon, yes. And my books, they'll on my website, they'll see all of the books, and they're all available on Amazon, right?
And the most recent one is Embrace Your Age. And then in January or February, you're going to have the new one. Remind me, I'm sorry, it's called what?
Loving Longevity.
Loving Longevity, both of them by Jim Flaherty. So I've got to ask you, got your 10-year plan.
Yeah.
What do you expect to be accomplishing in your 10th?
Well, part of that 10-year plan is to get something either serialized on TV or to have a feature film made or to have my TV series produced or my screenplay produced because they're both very good and they would do well. I'm quite sure.
Well, Halabai, toy, toy, toy. I'm knocking. Juice wouldn't knock wood because it represents something, but you would. So I will watch you knock wood and nod appreciatively and hope that these things happen for you and hope that you stay healthy and happy and positive, obviously, in your amazing outlook. Jim Flaherty, it just remains for me to thank you so much.
Thank you. Please write Modern Elder Academy. You would love them, Saul. You really would, David. Saul.
I'm not David, I'm Saul. There you go. Saul.
Yeah.
Saul. Jim, thank you, and shalom to you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. Jim B. Flaherty in the neighborhood with me, Rabbi Sol Solomon. So, yes, you don't get that kind of feeling, that attitude from me. Me, you get rage. He doesn't get depressed. I get depressed. Hold it. I got a depression coming on in 3, 2. Okay, I'm over it. But yeah, what a nice change of pace, and what a very, very cool gentleman, Jim Flaherty. It just means that, you know what? If you're rich and healthy, you can have a nice old age.